Yo, Roald Dahl. He's an author who pretty much defined a generation. I mean, you ask anyone these days what they read growing up, and at least one of the books is probably due to be a Roald Dahl book. In fact, his stories, they're timeless, and they've managed to define a generation. But a few of them have also managed to make jumps to the big and the small screen in terms of movies and in terms of big screen movies and made for TV movies. So I thought today I'd go over some of his works, note which ones have had good movie adaptations, uh, and five which haven't been adapted that I think personally have some potential. Roald Dahl's books, he's had kind of 11 films based on his works, although four of them are based on the same two books. But anyway, everyone, this my first one was one that rather surprised me in the 1984 classic The Gremlins, which some people may kind of argue that's not a dull book, but when I looked up his book lists in order to make this video, I saw The Gremlins was on there, and I thought, really? But apparently, The Gremlins, the movie at least, was very loosely based on one of his books. So, yeah, it's stuck on there. I mean, everyone knows the 1984 movie The Gremlins. I personally have never seen it, but it's up there. Then James and the Giant Peach, which of course got an adaptation in 1996, which remains relatively faithful to the book. The basic premise of it is the same: a kid and several giant bugs travelling across from Britain to the United States, a giant peach. The main difference, of course, being the fate of the aunts. In the movie, they kind of try to reclaim the peach and somewhat forcibly reclaim James, but then are arrested by the police, whereas in the book they get squashed by the peach and essentially crushed, which, a little dark, but there you go. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is one of the books that has been adapted multiple times. And in this case, the two particularly famous ones are the Gene Wilder version from 1971 and the Johnny Depp version from 2005. Everyone's seen at least one of those, and we all know of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Fantastic Mr. Fox got an adaptation in 2009, which is fairly faithful for one bit of the story, but then goes completely off the rails in the next bit. Which, I admit, I never saw the movie in its entirety, but I did catch parts of it here and there. Danny the Champion of the World, while it never had a big screen adaptation, apparently it did get a TV movie in 1989, which, of course, details the events of the book in which a boy and his father seemingly managed to rescue pheasants from poachers. Yeah. I mean, Danny, Champion of the World was actually one of the Roald Dahl books I never read. I heard about it, I knew the basic plot of it, I never read it for myself. Then there's the BFG, which also actually has managed to get two adaptations. The classic animated hand-drawn style from 1989, which I did watch a few times on VHS growing up, and the remake in 2016 using, I think, live action and also modern animation techniques. Yeah. And The Witches is apparently also due to get a new adaptation next year. The Witches already had a movie in 1990, but it's supposedly due to get another one in 2020, which the events of the book follow a kid who discovers a kind of gathering of witches and they plan to turn him into mice. The Witches was another one that I never really read, but I knew roughly about it. Matilda had a classic one starring Mara Wilson back in 1996, which I believe everyone has seen at least once. And there's also SEO Trot, which, while it hasn't had a big screen adaptation, it did manage to get a BBC One kind of Christmas Day movie in 2015, which of course details the events of the book of kind of an old bachelor who's in love with a woman downstairs, and in order to try and win her affection, kind of gives her a spell in order to make her tortoise bigger. So those are the ones that we have had kind of over the years, and to be fair, most of them are classics. Most of them are ones that people will have seen at least once and have stuck in their mind for a while. Now there are seven of his books which have not been adapted, either for TV or from film. Now I can't talk for two of them, those being the Minpins and My Uncle Oswald, because I personally didn't read those. But the five that I can talk about, I do think would hold kind of an interesting view for cinema to take. First off, The Magic Finger. And believe it or not, that's not as dirty as it sounds. The Magic Finger follows the adventures of. Well, it's told through the eyes of an 8-year-old girl who seemingly accidentally puts a spell on a family of hunters. And when they wake up a few days later, they discover that their hands have been replaced with wings and they're now the size of birds. And they have to kind of escape from a family of ducks who've now grown arms and are hunting them down with guns. Which I feel the main problem with this one, I feel, would be people would hear the title and would instantly get the giggles. But we'd have to clarify it's not that dirty. But then again, I do think it does present moral quandaries, kind of the ethical side of hunting, which I think would be a good thing to introduce to children from a young age. But yeah, I feel the Magic Finger would have some potential. The Enormous Crocodile. This is one that possibly I have the difficulty in adapting it because I don't know if crocodiles actually vary too much in size. But the story of a crocodile who he has plans to eat a nice, juicy little child, and eventually comes up with plans in order to try and get them, but is constantly foiled by other animals that he meets along in the jungle on his way to the village, until he is eventually thrown into the sun by an elephant, to which the grisly way he meets his fate, yeah, maybe that might be a little bit traumatizing to children. Plus, how are you going to sell to them a crocodile wants to eat you, and sell that into a movie? That one would be tricky, but I feel if they did animate it, they could probably do a good job of it. The Twits. The Twits is actually one of my favourite Roald Dahl books. And it's apparently been in development hell to get a movie for quite a while, but then I think a few years ago they finally dropped and went, yeah, this is never really happening. It was apparently in production at DreamWorks for a while when they were working with Aardman, but then when they eventually split, it eventually turned into the Croods. But The Twits, I do feel, it is a book that I feel could have some potential. I mean, there's a story of basically two horrible people who do horrible things to each other before they're eventually tricked by a flock of birds and a pack of monkeys. It does have some potential. I mean, especially with the tricks that they pull, with her dropping her glass eye into his mug of beer, him slipping a frog into her bed, her mixing worms into his dinner, and him convincing her she's shrinking and then tying her to balloons in order to stretch her. It would have potential, but then again, you'd essentially be watching what may be an hour movie of domestic violence or domestic abuse, which, okay, that might not be so fun to watch. George's Marvellous Medicine. This, I think, would be quite a tricky one, as you couldn't really do it with live action. Well, not properly. But George's Marvellous Medicine is the only Roald Dahl book to actually come with a warning at the beginning saying, do not try this at home, it will not work. The story follows the adventures of a young boy named George who attempts to mix up a new medicine for his grandmother in order to try and solve all her aches and pains. And he ends up making a concoction that makes her grow to the size of a house, or as tall as his house. And when his father finds out about this, he kind of convinces George to use the medicine to feed to his animals in order to make them grow bigger. Which, it does have some quite good things. I mean, you could theoretically make this into a quite good animated movie, but then again, they might want to shy away from it, given that you want to portray grandmothers as loving, caring people, and this one is apparently horrible. So yeah, I do remember reading this one quite well. I mean, I feel it could make for some good stuff, but then also the way that the grandma eventually gets it by essentially shrinking to death, that might not sit well with some audiences. But the final one that I feel would have potential for at least a TV movie is The Giraffe and the Pelly and Me. The story of a giraffe, a pelican, and a monkey who befriend a young boy, set up a window cleaning service, and eventually ends up catching a cat burglar who attempts to steal from the Duke of Hampshire. And I feel like this. I don't know if they could stretch this whole thing out into a kind of 2 hour long movie, but I think maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half for a TV movie. I feel The Giraffe and the Pelly and Me, I think it could work. It's got some good songs in there, it's got some likeable characters, it's got some good situations, and I feel it does have a nice conclusion that would make people feel warm and fuzzy. But there you go. Roald Dahl books, the ones that have been adapted to film and the ones that still have yet to come. I personally think they could do some good stuff here. I mean, he is an actor who is. He is an author who is sadly no longer with us, but I feel his works, they'll go on for a long time, and even if we don't get adaptations of the books that haven't been adapted, the ones that have, I feel will be with us for a long time. Anyway, until next time, see ya.